Solomonster here for a special Sound Off Extra post-Raw edition here on October 22nd, 2018. Talking about a very shocking episode of Monday Night Raw, but this is less about Raw and more about the announcement that opened the show tonight. The very unexpected, surprising announcement by Roman Reigns, who walked out in street clothes, came to the ring, and announced that he has been diagnosed with a recurrence of leukemia. Shocking for two reasons. Number one, that he has been diagnosed with leukemia. And number two, recurrence, meaning he had it once before, which he had not publicly disclosed previously. So a double whammy to open the show. And he also announced that he was immediately vacating the WWE Universal Championship. He revealed publicly for the first time that he had been diagnosed with leukemia 11 years ago. I believe he was 22 years old back then. He has been in remission since late 2008, so we're going on a decade plus here since he was first diagnosed with the illness. And this is according also to a press release that WWE issued during Raw. After Roman made the announcement, they put a very short statement, more like a statement than a press release, out publicly, and they mentioned that in the statement. And it also said in the statement that he is taking his battle with leukemia public in an effort to raise awareness and funds for research in order to advance cures for the disease. Now, there had been rumors all day long that he was dealing with some sort of an injury after he had missed the live events this past weekend. And, of course, now we know why. Now we know the real reason behind that. This was very much in the spirit of what you would have seen from Edge or Daniel Bryan. I mean, there have been those instances on Raw in the past where people have come out to make it. Usually it's some sort of emotional retirement speech. One thing that Roman made very clear here is that this was not intended to be a retirement speech. He has every expectation of beating this and coming back. And so he was not looking at this as the end of his career or anything like that. But this is a very, very serious situation. You know, he said he's going to go home. He's going to focus on his health and on his family. He said he beat leukemia once, and he vowed to beat it again and come back even stronger. He said, "You will see me very, very soon." That from Roman Reigns. And I was knocked back on my heels, as I'm sure a lot of you were watching that, because it was weird too, because when I saw him walk out in street clothes, it was jarring because I can't remember the last time, if ever, I'm sure he has before at some point, that he just walked out in regular street clothes and not the tactical vest. And I thought to myself as he was coming to the ring, I said, he ought to come out like this more often. There was just something different about him. And I thought, well, this is good. I like this. I'd like to see him do more of that. I had no idea that he was coming out to make the kind of announcement that he did. And it knocked me back on my heels, not just because it was so shocking, but, as I mentioned on Twitter, I said it hits home for me. And I know there are probably some people listening to this who have been affected, not just by cancer, but specifically by leukemia and other types of blood cancer. Maybe you had a family member or a friend who was affected by it, or even lost their life from it. And I know how that feels. And so that was very shocking to me for that reason as well. Unfortunately, I say that unfortunately, I know about leukemia all too well. As many of you probably know, if you've listened to my podcast for any length of time, I'm kind of an open book on stuff like this. I've talked about what my mother went through. My mother was diagnosed with leukemia 14 years ago. And at the time, she was older than Roman is now, although not really much older. She was in her early 40s, but, mid 40s, I guess. But that's an experience that I personally will never forget. It was like a sucker punch to the gut. And if you don't know anything about it, you hear that word, you hear the word leukemia, and it just, my first thought when I heard it back in 2004, or found out that she had it, was that it was a death sentence. That was my immediate thought. And my heart just sank. I didn't know anything about it. I just thought that it was a death sentence. And it would have been for her. We found out from her doctor later on, her doctor who's now my doctor, later on, that had we waited 2 or 3 more weeks to start treatment, she wouldn't have lasted. And I've talked on the show also about my own situation. Blood cancer is a very frustrating thing. It's something I have. I don't have leukemia, although what I have could develop into that later on. There's a chance, but I'm dealing with a less serious, different form of blood cancer. And the frustrating thing about it is, and again, I think it's something where if you don't have a lot of experience with cancer, dealing with it yourself or in your family, your first thought is, well, just cut it out. You think of it as a tumor. And that doesn't always work with tumors either. But in the case of blood cancer, what makes it so frustrating is that there's nothing to cut out. There's something going on in the bone marrow, and weird things are happening, and there really isn't a whole hell of a lot that you can do above and beyond the standard treatment, which typically is chemotherapy, radiation. In some cases, it may be stem cell transplant, depending on the kind of leukemia that you have. There are different types of leukemia. So there are 4 primary types of leukemia. I don't need to go into what they are, but there really are 4 primary types, and there's acute leukemia, and then there's chronic leukemia. We don't know which one Roman Reigns has. I don't know if that's something he will at some point go public with. If he wants to turn this into an awareness campaign and help other people, he may well come forward at some point, but that was not specified tonight. He did not get into the details about what type of leukemia he had back in 2008, what type of leukemia he has now. Is it the same kind? Is it a different type? We don't know. But there is chronic and there is acute. Look, I don't think anybody wants to get either kind. I look at acute as being worse. That's what my mother had, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. That was the type that I know about because that's what she had. I know how devastating it can be. I know how it can kick your ass. I know that she went through hell. These memories are seared in my brain. It's not something that I'll ever forget. You look at somebody who is otherwise still young and healthy and doesn't seem outwardly sick and there's nothing wrong with them, and then you see it's not even the disease so much, but the treatment for the disease is what really kicks your ass. And you see them almost like disintegrating in a way in front of your eyes. Many a time I had to sit there and help her doctor position her a certain way to have, spinal taps. And I remember being given a crash course. I was at the hospital and they were sending her home, and they had to give me a crash course in how to administer Neupogen shots. Now, Neupogen is a drug. I assume it's still given to help keep your white blood cells up. It helps, boost your immune system. And so they sent us home with this kit, and I would have to administer the injections on a nightly basis. And, she would cry, and it was just an awful experience. You get an education that you do not want to get when you go through any kind of serious illness and you go through a situation like that. And I know that people have parents and siblings and significant others, and you know how tough it can be. This is a very serious, life-threatening illness. This is not something to be joked about. This is not something to be taken lightly. And the thing with my mom, she beat it, and so will he. He beat it once. And anybody who beats, a disease like leukemia, that's impressive enough. What concerns me about this, without knowing his condition and all the details, and again, it's none of my business unless he wants to share that, but what was concerning to me is the fact that it was a recurrence of cancer. And I think anybody who knows about cancer knows that in a lot of cases, if it comes back a second time, it's typically more aggressive, and that usually is not a good thing. Now, that may be different depending on what exactly you have. Certainly with in her case, with the breast cancer, when it came back, it ended up taking her life earlier this year. So when you hear about recurrence of cancer, it always scares me. And I know a lot of friends and family members were, they were in that situation, and it didn't end well for them. Hopefully that's not the case with him. Hopefully he'll beat it a second time. He'll be able to come back. He'll be able to resume his career. To me, this goes above and beyond what you think of Roman Reigns, the character, what you think of Roman Reigns as a wrestler. None of that matters. What we're talking about here is life and death. We're talking about a human being. This is not something to be joked about. This is not a case where, you think it could be a work. I think wrestling fans, myself included sometimes, we're all so cynical. Everything's a work, everything. And it was somewhat mind-boggling to me to see the number of people on social media tonight, even people tweeting me, do you think it could be a work? Is it a work? Is it a way for Vince McMahon to get Roman cheered? I mean, really? Here's a company on this very show tonight. Had a whole segment. Titus O'Neil was out there with breast cancer survivors talking about Susan G. Komen. And believe you me, this is not the sort of thing that they would joke about. No, this is not a work. This is not a way to get him over. Although I will say this: when he beats this and comes back, I think he's a babyface for life. If there's one silver lining in this, he could look at it. He could look at it that way, I guess. But it's scary stuff. Again, whenever you're dealing with blood issues or blood cancer, it could be. You're talking about white blood cells and red blood cells and platelets. Again, this is it just triggers so many memories for me. And even stuff that I'm going through myself right now. I'm not relating my situation to his, and that mine is more serious than what he's going through. But I kind of have a sense, anybody who's dealt with anything like this, how scary it can be. It's scary for me. I don't talk about it much on the show. People ask me from time to time, hey, you haven't, talked about it. You don't want to be consumed by it. I feel like if I think about it too much, if I talk about it too much, I drive myself nuts. Especially when it's something chronic and progressive. That's what it is in my case. Again, I'm curious to see if he does come out and give more details about what he has, because it can be, you can go from one end to the other in terms of how serious it really is. Hopefully I'm sure he's got, good doctors. And as long as he stays on top of things and he's got good doctors and they have a solid, sound plan, like I said, he beat it once before. I'm sure he'll do it a second time, and he'll be able to make his way back, hopefully at some point next year. As far as the Universal title situation is concerned, they did make an announcement on the show tonight. They have adjusted the Crown Jewel main event. It will be Braun Strowman challenging Brock Lesnar to crown a new Universal Champion. So we had a triple threat. They cut out one guy, and they're going to just keep it one-on-one. With Braun and with Brock, there is a new champion guaranteed. All of a sudden, Crown Jewel takes on a lot more importance than it had before. And what's interesting about this is they turned Braun Strowman many, many weeks ago because Roman won the championship at SummerSlam. They needed a big heel for him to challenge, and it turned out to be the Shield challenging, Strowman and Ziggler and McIntyre. But they turned Braun, and Braun had been super over, hot babyface, fans were behind him, and they turned him. And so now they're in a situation where they had to do an about face. Now, it kind of seemed like they were going in that direction last week anyway. I do wonder how much of what we saw tonight was a bit more rushed than it otherwise would have been. I'm sure the show tonight would have looked at least a little bit different than it turned out to be, were it not for the Roman situation. What they did tonight on the show is they had McIntyre attack Strowman again with a Claymore kick earlier in the show when Strowman was cutting a promo on Paul Heyman. And Strowman came back out at the end of the show to interfere in the main event, which was a tag team title match. It was Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose challenging Ziggler and McIntyre for the championships. Ambrose and Rollins had come out earlier in the show to embrace Roman at the end of his segment. They did one last Shield fist bump for the time being. Rollins was just a blubbering mess. I'm sure there were a lot of people watching on TV who were doing okay until they saw Seth. And then they probably were a blubbering mess themselves. But here it was the tag team titles up for grabs. It seemed kind of predictable going into the main event where this was headed, and it's exactly what they did. They had Strowman come out. He brawled with McIntyre into the crowd. That left Dolph all by himself. and he ended up getting curb stomped and pinned. And so the new Raw Tag Team Champions are Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, and they built it up as this really emotional moment. They did it for Roman, and people were cheering and were happy. And then Dean Ambrose lowered the boom, and he laid out Seth Rollins with dirty deeds. And so after all of the teases and all of the weeks and weeks of hoping and wondering and waiting to see if Dean Ambrose was going to turn heel, if they were going to pull the trigger on the heel turn, of all the weeks and of all the shows for them to do it, they had to do it tonight. And you know what? I thought it was masterfully done. I thought that the way they executed this, the timing of it, some people might look at it and go, this was terrible timing, this was tasteless. Not at all. Not at all. I thought this was brilliant. You want to maximize the amount of heat on this guy? I can't think of a better time to pull it off than tonight. And how often do we get to see a truly shocking swerve? And we don't get to see that very often. And there was genuine emotion from the crowd. People were sad, they were angry in some cases, or at least the people they were able to get some close-up shots of. They found their people in the crowd who were reacting just perfectly, exactly the way you would want them to. And now, all of a sudden, this feud that I'm sure will now continue on for many more weeks to come between Ambrose and Rollins has a personal touch to it. I hate that it had to be in this way, but I always say, it's always better when you're able to inject something personal into these storylines and just make it feel more real. So I think the way they executed this tonight was absolutely brilliant. And I'll talk more about it when I do the full podcast this weekend. But just back to Strowman and Lesnar for a second, I think Strowman should win and set up McIntyre as his first challenger. Clearly the two of them have an issue. I think McIntyre is ready to step up to that level. I said many months ago, and I'm sure I wasn't the only person who could see the potential in this guy, and I said, if this guy isn't at least challenging for the top championship by or before WrestleMania, it would be a crime. I didn't want it to, happen because of this. I didn't want it to happen in this way. But things seem to be set up. If we assume that Brock is doing the UFC thing and he's not back for good, I certainly don't see any reason to put the belt back on him. Just pull the trigger for once, finally, after all this time. Put the championship on Strowman. And you can go with Strowman and McIntyre for at least a couple of matches. And in the meantime, Ambrose and Seth, I'm sure, are going to feud for at least a few months. You don't need to go right into Strowman and Ambrose and put the title on Ambrose. I think that's something you could do, maybe at the Rumble, sort of between then and WrestleMania. You could really build Dean Ambrose up as a, super crazy heel. We really haven't had the chance to see him portray that role since he debuted on the main roster. The Shield were heels when they debuted, but I don't think we've really even seen Dean Ambrose scratch the surface of what he could do as a heel if they let him. Now, they're not going to let him go as far as he probably could go and would like to go, but I think there's a lot of potential here, and for him, it's just a turn that was long overdue. So as far as the storyline stuff they did at the end of the show, I thought it was brilliant. The other thing here, just to comment on Roman here before we wrap this up, I do think that Roman being out for a while, it presents an opportunity for a lot of other people to step up and get some opportunities that probably before this they otherwise would not have gotten. And I say, it's up to them to step up. Obviously, the decision ultimately is up to the people writing and booking this stuff. You can only step up so much. If they don't let you, you know what I mean? There's only so much you can do. But it's going to present an opportunity for at least one guy, if not multiple guys, to occupy the spot that was taken by Roman Reigns. Roman was positioned as the guy, and now he's going to be gone for a while. And so that opens up some opportunities for people. So you try to look at the silver lining. You try to look at, some kind of positive to it. And I think for guys like Rollins and Ambrose and McIntyre, this could turn out to benefit them. At the end of the day, on the Roman Reigns stuff, none of this really matters. It all feels inconsequential. That's kind of how the rest of the show felt to me, honestly, watching after Roman's announcement. Leo Rush came out and he was being annoying, and I almost turned the show off at that point because, boy, was that jarring. Putting him out there right after that segment, nothing else really felt like it was of any great importance. And certainly I wish nothing but the best to Roman Reigns, and I hope he gets well real soon. I know how serious a situation it can be, and I hope in his case that he beats it a second time, and he can come back and he can tell that story. And like I said, I think he'll be a babyface for life now when he comes back. Maybe I shouldn't speak too quickly on that. John Cena's had a few big injuries before, and he always comes back and gets cheered for about 10 seconds, and then he would get booed again. This is a little bit different, though. And so I don't really have anything else to say. It's just very, very unexpected. I did not plan on doing this video here tonight, but I felt like I just did not want to wait until this weekend to address this whole thing. And I will be watching to see if any other details are released in the coming days as far as exactly what he is dealing with. But again, take it from me. What he is going through, regardless of what type of leukemia it is a life and death situation. It is nothing to mess with. It is nothing to take lightly at all. And I'm sure he's well aware of that, given that he's gone through this once before. And anybody listening within the sound of my voice, if you know anything about this stuff, you know everything I'm saying here is 100% true. It is scary, scary stuff when it comes to any kind of cancer, blood cancer included. And so my best to him. I'll be back for the full regular podcast episode 570 this weekend. That's this Sunday. Until then, be well, stay safe, and I'll see you guys back here on the YouTube channel for more Sound Off real soon. Take care, guys.